We need the river for access.
What about the other area downstream?
We can't afford them both, Simeon.
Well, we've got to. If anyone else starts prospecting, we'll have lost all that we've done over the last 6 months.
There. That's my share for the claim.
I'm off at first light. I should make Pretoria in 4 days.
We'll be back in 10, eh?
In 6 months, we'll be rich. Good night, Herod.
Good night.
Sit hom op een van die perde en vat hom terug na die kraal.
Who the hell are you?
Stella de Zeigter. And you?
Lee. Simeon Lee. How long have I been here?
This is your third day. You'd have died in half a day if we hadn't have found you. Come.
Thanks. I was, mauled by a lion.
Yeah, I know. I took the bullet out.
All right. My partner attacked me.
That's what diamonds do to people, eh? Don't worry, they're safe. And your map, it's a bit bloodstained, though.
Do you, live out here all by yourself?
My father got tired of trying to marry me off.
Gereformeerde. Gewiggy. Gewiggy.
Vaaghalsige.
Verhalsiffer.
Goed. 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 Simeon? Simeon?
Happy Christmas.
And to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Well, that's the last decent meal I'll get till the new year, I expect.
You are not looking forward to your Christmas, Chief Inspector?
We're going to Mrs. Japp's family in Wales. If they start singing again...
I shall think of you, Chief Inspector, as I sit down to my simple repast. For Poaro, it will be a quiet Christmas. With my radio, perhaps, a book, and a box of exquisite Belgian chocolates.
Well, listen, Poirot. Think of me on Christmas morning, when you open this.
Oh, thank you very much, Chief Inspector.
Merry Christmas, Poirot.
Merry Christmas to you. Oh, yes, of course. There we are, my dear. And a very happy Christmas to you. Thank you.
All right, I'm not a child. Bring them in.
Mr. Simeon Lee?
Yes. Have you got them? Get out. Get out, all of you! Get out.
Yes, Monsieur Dicker? Monsieur Dicker, my radiator, it has gone cold, and there is a... Well, then the boiler must be repaired. After Christmas? That is most unsatisfactory.
Unfortunately, I can't do anything about
I don't...
I cannot get hold of a plumber, sir, until
I see.
after the holidays. I'm sorry about it, but there's nothing...
Au revoir, Monsieur Dicker. Yes.
Hercule Poirot?
Yes, it is I, Hercule Poirot, who speaks.
I need a detective to come and stay here in my house for Christmas. Now, don't say no just like that. Hear me out. Superintendent Sugden of the Shropshire Police recommended you.
I do not know.
I don't care if you don't know him. He knows you. My life is in danger.
Have you received any threats, Monsieur?
Simeon Lee. Oh, well, you'd have to be here to understand.
Tell to me, if you please, Monsieur Lee. Does your house have the central heating?
What? Yes, of course.
Very well. Poirot will be there tomorrow. Give to me, if you please, your address.
I saw 3 ships come sailing in on Christmas Day, on Christmas Day. I saw 3 ships come sailing in on Christmas Day in the water.
ready to order, sir?
Yes, thank you very much. But please, to tell me, what is this brown Windsor soup?
Well, sir, it's soup from Windsor.
I see. But then I will have this brown Windsor soup, followed by have a side of savory.
Okay, if I share your table.
Of course.
Well, I'll be glad to get out of London, I don't mind telling you. Oh, it's a terrible place.
But you are English, no?
Been abroad for years. What about you?
I'm Spanish.
You see any of this Civil War business over in Spain?
I saw a bomb drop, and it blew up a car.
That didn't upset you?
One is alive for a time in this world, yes, and then one is dead. And one's friends are sad, and one's enemies rejoice.
I mean, don't you believe in forgiving your enemies, Senorita?
No, I do not. If I had an enemy, I would cut his throat like this.
I wouldn't like to be your enemy, Senorita.
But it does not look very delicious.
Well, sir, it is brown Windsor soup.
What brings you to England?
I'm going to stay with my English relations. They are very rich, I think. They live in a big house called Gorston Hall.
Good God.
What is it?
You must be Jennifer's girl.
My mother's name was Jennifer.
I'm Harry Lee. Jennifer was my sister. Does the family know you're coming?
Oh, yes.
That's more than they do with me.
He's playing God, as he always does. It's the role he enjoys most.
Well, I think it's extremely boring.
Well, boring or not, it's our duty to be here, Magdalena. Moreover, it enables us to save considerably.
We shouldn't have to scrimp and save like this. Well, can't you make your father give you some more money?
He upped my allowance last year.
Well, what happens when he dies?
The bulk of his money comes to Alfred and myself.
Isn't there another brother?
No. Harry left years ago. We don't talk about him incidentally. A very disreputable character.
Well, your father's not all that reputable, George.
What on earth do you mean by that?
Well, when he gets me alone, he makes me feel quite uncomfortable. The things he says.
Yes, well, one has to make allowances.
It isn't only the things he says.
At father's age, with his health being so bad...
Must you always give in to him, Alfred?
He's a very old man, Lydia.
Well, he'll get older and more tyrannical. Oh, why must we have George and Magdalena for Christmas?
Father hasn't seen George for a long time. He's very good to us, you know, Lydia.
Oh, Alfred. Magdalena's going to be frightfully bored anyway.
Well, why George has to go and marry a girl 20 years younger than himself, I shall never know. He always was a fool.
Well, I suppose she's been quite a help to him in his constituency.
All right, what is it, Horbury?
Beg pardon, sir. Is it convenient if I take the car? Mr. Lee's asked me to go to the station and meet some more guests.
Some more guests?
Wait a minute!
says that
Ah, Lydia, my dear. What a nice colour you've got.
he says there are to be more guests for Christmas.
Just straighten my legs for me, would you, my dear? It's a terrible thing to get old, Lydia.
Who are these people that are coming?
Well, first of all, there's my old friend Hercule Poirot.
Who's he?
A friend. And then there's Pilar.
Pilar?
Pilar Estravados, Jennifer's girl, my granddaughter.
But you didn't tell me.
It's going to be a grand Christmas. All my children round me. There now, Alfred, there's your clue. Guess who the other visitor is.
But you haven't got any more.
Your brother, Harry, of course.
What do you think of the spats? And the patent leather shoes, eh? Just the thing for a weekend in the country. And those mustachios must have enough wax in them to keep Madame Tussauds going for a fortnight.
Mr. Stravados?
Yes?
Mr. Simeon Lee sent me to meet you. Mr. Harry Lee?
Sure.
I'll put your bags in the booth. Mr. Poirot?
You were a friend of the old bastard Simeon.
I am a friend of Mr. Lee, yes.
There's no good you calling him Mr. Lee, chum. There'll be more Mr. Lees than you can shake a stick at Gorston this Xmas. And I'm one of them. Harry Lee's the name.
Hercule Poirot.
Pardon?
Poirot. Hercule Poirot.
French, eh?
No.
I'm her long-lost uncle. Tell him your name, Pilar.
Pilar Estravados.
You two should get on, being foreign.
Alfred, the car's arrived. What are you doing?
I'm writing a note to Father, protesting in the strongest possible terms.
Notes. Whatever good do you think notes are going to do?
Bless my soul if it ain't Tresillian. How are you, Tresillian?
Mr. Harry.
Still here, eh? Still the same ugly old dump.
You don't look very tough.
Hercule Poirot is a detective, not a bodyguard, monsieur.
Oh, is he? Got a brain, has he? Ah, good thing somebody has. All my sons are complete nincompoops. I've probably got better sons scattered all over the world. Born on the wrong side of the blanket. My family hate me, you know.
It is not hard to see why, Monsieur Lee.
They're frightened of me.
It is often the way with men who are old and rich.
Well, anyway, I'm going to make an announcement this evening, and then they'll have good cause to hate me. What do you want?
You wanted to see Miss Estravados, sir. She's outside.
All right. One more minute.
What is it that you wish me to do here, Monsieur Lee?
Keep your eyes open. Keep your ears open.
Bien, what am I looking for? What am I listening for?
You'll know when it happens.
Tressilian is taking your bags to your room, sir.
Thank you.
I've been a very wicked man, Pilar. What do you think of that?
The nuns say all men are wicked.
Nuns. But I don't regret it. I've enjoyed every moment of it. I've cheated and I've stolen and I've lied. And the women... You shocked, Pilar?
Why should I be shocked? Men always desire women. That is why wives are unhappy. Go to church and pray.
You are the devil's brat.
Well, you like me to sit here with you, grandfather?
Yes, I do. It's a long time since I was close to anything as young and beautiful as you are. It warms my old bones. Ah, but you don't fool me. Don't think I don't know why you sit here listening to me droning on. Money. All right. I'll show you something. Just got these yesterday from the company museum in Pretoria. These are the first diamonds I ever took from my first mine.
Well, they are little pebbles, that is all.
They're uncut. That's how diamonds are when they're found.
Well, why do you not have them cut?
Because I like them like this. It all comes back to me. The sunshine, and the oxen, and the smell of the veldt, and the quiet of the evenings.
It is unfortunate that these so-called Republicans have forced him to take the action he has taken. But take it from me, Generalissimo Franco has right on his side.
Well, yes, it is always reassuring to hear the opinion of an expert on these matters.
I see what you're driving
Can I top
at.
anybody's glass up?
You're very tanned. Have you spent time in South Africa too, like your father?
No, only a year or two. I've been in Argentina mostly, well, apart from my time in Macau.
I'm afraid I've been absolutely nowhere.
Could I have a word, Lydia? I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
How about you? I've remembered who this Hercule Poirot is. He's a detective.
The police? Oh, surely not.
He's one of those private detectives.
But why should your father want to...
Excuse me, sir.
What is it, Horbury?
Mr. Lee's ready to see you all now.
Come in. Hello, is that you, Charlton? Oh, yes, I'm sorry to trouble you at home, but it is rather urgent. I want you to make a new will for me. Yes. Sit down, I won't be long. Yes, well, you see, it's some time since the other will was made, and things have changed. No, I don't want to spoil your Christmas. Come over on Boxing Day. Or the next day, yes. I shan't be dying just yet. Goodbye. You're all looking very glum. What's the matter? Hey, I don't know you anywhere. Even after all these years, your taste in clothes hasn't improved, I see.
Good to see you, Dad. You're looking well.
Fortunately, I did not ask you all up here for the pleasure of seeing your smiling faces, but because I want to say that we have to reorganize things a bit now that we have 2 more people living in the house.
What do you mean?
Pilar will make her home with us here, naturally, and Harry is home for good.
Harry's coming to live here?
Well, what's wrong with that, old boy?
Harry is my son, too, you know, George. Of course, it is going to mean cutting back a little in other areas. Your allowance, for instance, George, will have to go.
Well, you can't do that, Father. You don't understand how heavy my expenses are already.
Oh? Well, let your wife do her bit, then. She could make her own clothes. Even my wife could make her own clothes. And she was one of the most stupid women it's been my sorrow to meet.
You've no right to talk about our mother like that.
Right! Right! You've no rights, any of you. You're just a set of namby-pamby weaklings. Has any of you produced one grandson for me? No!
Hold hard, Dad.
Ah, I'm just sick to death of the lot of you. Get out! Get out, all of you! Get out! Get out!
What's got into him?
Go to hell! I blame you, Alfred. You've had charge of him here.
What are you talking about?
I think there's a case for getting a doctor in right away.
A doctor? There's nothing wrong with him.
He's clearly not of sound mind. 2 doctors, isn't it?
Ladies, shall we?
Shall I announce you, Superintendent?
That's all right, Tressilian. Mr. Lee's expecting me.
Come and have some coffee. The gentleman will be through in a minute.
Over here?
It's wonderful that you could come, Pilar.
It's wonderful for me, too, to meet my uncles and aunts and this grand house.
After 7 years! Yeah, but I've got these blokes chasing me for cash.
I was having a word at a cocktail party with Buffy, and you know, he has the ear of the PM, right?
Who was it?
Mr. Sugden, Superintendent of Police. Watch what you're doing.
I'm sorry, Mr. Tressilian.
You've got no right to go touching things.
What did he want, this police superintendent?
He's collecting for the police orphanage.
Oh? And did he get anything?
I'm sure he did.
We'll be having more snow tonight, I shouldn't wonder.
We'll be cut off again if we're not careful.
Good night, ladies.
Going to the pictures?
I expect so.
the door down.
Don't be a fool, it's made of solid oak.
Quick, battering ram.
What's going on?
1, 2, 3. Let's
What
try
does this
again.
mean?
Harder.
What was that terrible?
1, 2, 3. Again. 1, 2, 3. You've got to put some more effort in. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
Dad? Excusez-moi, monsieur.
I've forgotten my book.
I didn't have a drawer open it, sir.
What's going on?
Something's happened upstairs, sir.
Oh, Superintendent, I was just going to telephone the police. I would have used old Mr. Lee's phone, but they told me not to touch anything. Oh, dear.
What?
It's old Mr. Lee, sir. Mr. Simeon. He's been killed, murdered.
My God, what a shambles. Well, nothing must be touched.
All right. I want this room cleared.
Who are you?
Police. Superintendent Sutton.
You got here very quickly.
Would everybody please wait downstairs? Excuse me, miss. Nothing must be touched or disturbed.
She knows that.
You picked up something from the floor just now.
I did?
It's in your hand now. Please give it to me. Ah, you must be Mr. Poirot.
Superintendent.
Lucky we had a detective here on the spot.
Perhaps.
Stay in here, would you?
Look.
Don't touch it.
It is where he kept his diamonds. They have gone.
Ding dong, merrily on high, in heaven the bells are ringing. Ding dong, merrily the sky is ringing with angels singing. Gloria, Hosanna in excelsis. Gloria, Hosanna in excelsis. In some hill below, let steeple bells be swung. Like Christian people sang. Gloria, Hosanna in excelsis.
What are you doing here, Poirot? I've come to rescue you, mon ami. The Superintendent Sugden was going to call in Scotland Yard in any case, so I suggested that as you were just across the border.
It must have been the work of a lunatic.
That's your theory, is it?
Isn't there some mental home in the vicinity? A homicidal maniac?
How do you suppose this homicidal maniac gained admittance to the house, Mr. Lee? The only door that wasn't locked was the kitchen door, and the kitchen staff didn't see any homicidal maniacs.
Well,
Pardon.
No. Come in, Mr. Poirot.
I have the Chief Inspector Japp with me, Superintendent.
Japp? From Scotland Yard. This is a pleasure indeed, Chief Inspector.
Thank you, sir.
I expect you're used to this kind of thing, Chief Inspector, but murders are few and far between in this part of the country.
I imagine so, sir.
Well, I was just about to ask Mr. George Lee here the crucial question.
Oh, yes?
Which is, of course, Mr. Lee, where were you at the time of the murder?
I was in here. On the telephone. Calling my agent in Westringham, as a matter of fact.
So you were actually in this room when you heard the noises from upstairs?
The crashing about and screaming.
Yes.
Mr. Poirot tells me these diamonds have gone from the safe, sir.
Yes. I'm getting a few more men in from Shrewsbury to do a thorough search of the house and grounds. But the theft of the diamonds may not be as indicative as it seems.
Forgive me, but I don't understand, Superintendent.
Mr. Lee telephoned me yesterday afternoon. He wanted me to come over and see him at 8:15. Made a special point of the time. What's more, he told me to tell the butler that I was collecting for some police charity.
Ah.
Well, Mr. Lee's an important person in these parts, so I did as he said. He told me that several £1,000s worth of uncut diamonds had been stolen from his safe. He thought.
He thought?
He said they definitely were missing, but that only 2 people could have done it. And one of them might have done it as a joke.
I have yet to meet anybody in this household, Superintendent, that has even the most rudimentary sense of humor.
He didn't happen to name these people, did he, sir?
No, he didn't, Chief Inspector. But it's odd. He wanted me to go away and come back again in about an hour. Said he'd have a clearer idea then about if he'd been robbed or if it was a joke. I can tell you, by this time I was getting pretty fed up with Mr. Lee.
But of the 2 people that he suspected, is it possible that one could be a servant and the other a member of his family?
And if it was family, he didn't want to drop them in it.
Well, yes. Perhaps my visit was just meant to put the frighteners on them.
So you left?
Yes, I did. It wasn't worth my while going all the way home, so I went and sat in the car. I was just on my way back. I was to use leaving the orphanage subscription book behind as an excuse, when all this hell broke loose.
What's been going on in here?
Simeon Lee was a man who was shrunken, old, and frail, n'est-ce pas? And yet all this, it signifies, do you not think so, Chief Inspector?
Looks more like a 5-star riot than a simple throat cutting. This door was locked, you say?
Yes.
Ma'am?
There are no prints on it, apart from the old man's.
You observed the little scratches at the end of the barrel, Chief Inspector?
It's been turned from the outside, using long-nosed pliers.
But why, mon ami? So that we would think that Simeon Lee locked the door himself and that it was suicide? So suicide most strange, n'est-ce pas? Who hurls around the room or the furniture and then screams before he commits the act?
Suppose Mr. Lee put up more resistance than the murderer expected and made such a racket that he had to get out quick before he had time to put the room to rights.
He couldn't have gone out through the window?
All bolted shut.
This one isn't.
But it's locked in that position for ventilation.
But is it not a possibility that Simeon Lee did in fact commit a suicide, but wanted it to look like murder?
Why would he do that?
Because Simeon Lee was a man most vengeful, Chief Inspector, and had not a great love for his family.
Blimey.
Superintendent, what was it that Mademoiselle Estravados picked up from the floor in the room of Monsieur Simeon Lee?
Oh, last night.
Wait.
Here.
In detective stories, it's the sort of thing that solves the whole mystery. What do you think?
A little wooden peg. And a little rubber ring.
Keep them if you like. If they've got anything to do with the murder, I'll retire from the police force.
No. I would not deprive you of them, mon ami. Tell me, what was it that made you recommend me to Monsieur Simeon Lee?
I didn't.
What time was it you went out last night?
Just after 8 o'clock. I went to the cinema in Oswestry. It's only 10 minutes in the bus.
Anybody see you there?
I was with a young lady.
Oh, yes? What's her name?
Doris Buckles, sir. She works in the United Dairies in Markham Road. I didn't have anything to do with this, sir.
What can you tell us about the diamonds Mr. Lee kept in his safe?
Nothing, sir. They arrived the day before yesterday. Mr. Lee said they came from his old company museum in Africa. It's not very pleasant when a murder happens in a house.
Nobody said it was.
Morning.
Good morning.
Can I help you?
No, thank you. I'm just looking.
Christmas presents, is it? For the wife?
No. No, if you please, monsieur, I should like to buy the present for a good friend.
With a sense of humour, I dare say.
Where?
Bulb-operated hairy spider?
Oh, no, thank you.
My 3-in-1 package of itching powder, ink blot and stink bombs.
No. You see, my friend, he is a policeman.
Oh. He won't be wanting the Sherlock Holmes detective set, then?
I do not imagine so, no.
Cigars?
Exploding?
Jamaican?
Boom. Bonjour, Madame Lee. Bonjour, Monsieur.
Good morning, Mr. Poirot.
Pardon, Madame, but I do not understand that which you do.
Oh, it's just a hobby of mine. Miniature gardens. This one's a desert oasis, and this'll be an Italian vineyard when it's finished. And this is a Japanese garden. Do you see all the stones?
C'est charmant.
Mr. Poirot, why did my father-in-law ask you to Galston?
To tell you the truth, Madame, I am not sure. He told me that his life was in danger.
But from whom?
He did not specify.
There is somebody I don't trust. Horbury's only been with us a year and...
Tell me, Madame, at the time of the murder, your husband, he was in the dining room with Monsieur Harry? Where were you?
I was in the drawing room having coffee.
So you were alone?
No, the Spanish girl was there. No, she wasn't. She went out a couple of minutes before. First Magdalena went, and then Pilar went.
So you were quite alone?
Yes, I suppose I was.
And tell me, who was the first to arrive at the door of your father-in-law?
I was.
It's locked! It's locked!
And you saw there no other person? No other person who came out of the room?
Of course not.
Tell me, Monsieur Lee, I have to, I'm afraid, ask the questions most obvious as well as the subtle ones. Did you know the combination of the safe belonging to your father?
No, nobody did. But it would have been easy enough to discover. You must find out who did this awful thing, Mr. Poirot. You must find out.
Very violent sort of blokes, these Africans.
Europeans do not figure too badly in the odds of violence, Chief Inspector.
Nah, but it gives you the creeps, this place, doesn't it?
You are too sensitive, mon ami.
That's true.
Chief Inspector,
What is it, Poirot?
we know of two possible motives for the murder of Monsieur Simeon Lee. One is a simple case of the theft of the diamonds.
And the other's old Simeon's will. Did someone want him dead before he could make the changes he was threatening?
Précisément.
No. You'll go in off if you do that. Now, grip the butt of the cue firmly and...
Good morning. Mr. Harry Lee, I presume?
And who are you?
Chief Inspector Japp, Scotland Yard.
Brought in the big guns, have they?
I'd like a word with Miss Estravados.
Estrabados.
Yes. In private.
Don't let them bully you, kid.
Now then, Miss
Bados.
Estravados, quite. You understand English all right, do you?
My mother was English. I am really a very English person.
Is your passport English?
It is Spanish.
We'd better have a look at that if you don't mind.
It's in my luggage, I think.
So your grandfather sent for you to come from Spain, and you arrived here yesterday, is that right?
Yes.
Tell me, mademoiselle, when...
Sorry, I was looking for Sergeant Coombs. Please, don't let me interrupt.
When you first met your grandfather, what did you think of him?
He was very, very old. He had to sit in a chair, and his face was all dried up. But I like him all the same. I think that when he was a young man, he must have been very handsome. Like you.
There you are, sir.
I think I'd better go and find Sergeant Coombs.
Now, these diamonds that have been stolen,
They were not like diamonds. Just very ugly little stones.
so he showed them to you, did he? Didn't give you any of them, I suppose.
No. But I thought that one day he would, if I was very nice to him and came often to sit with him. Because old men, they like very much young girls.
Tell me, mademoiselle, who do you think stole them?
Robbery.
Why do you say that?
He has the face of a thief. His eyes go so, from side to side, and he listens at doors.
Where were you when the crime was committed, Miss Estravados?
I went up to my room. I remember the butler had just brought in the coffee. But I wanted a clean handkerchief, so I went upstairs. I was sitting at my dressing table, repairing my makeup. And then far away, I heard a scream and everybody running. And so I went too.
I see. So you were all by yourself, up in your bedroom, when Simeon Lee died.
Yes. Yes, I was.
Here, Sergeant!
Empty. Whose room is this?
It's that Member of Parliament's and his wife's.
You know what I think, Poirot?
No, Chief Inspector. What is it that you think?
I think this murder was done by a woman. That's what I think.
And why is it that you think that?
Right. Simeon Lee was a frail old man, yes?
Monsieur Simeon Lee was a man of the frailness extreme, oui?
Then how do you account for the furniture in his room being knocked about all over the shop like it was? I mean, he couldn't have put up much of a struggle against a man, could he? But against a woman...
Ah, Chief Inspector, you have been thinking again. I have warned you of this before.
Oh, well.
But you know, seriously, Chief Inspector, all of the family, the women included, they will have alibis for the time of the murder.
Well, the lovely Magdalena Lee's is pretty flimsy, and it was her luggage we found the diamond case in.
If I'd stolen the diamonds, do you really think I'd be stupid enough to leave the box in my own luggage?
Would you tell us where you were at the time of the murder, Mrs. Lee?
In the drawing room?
In the drawing room with Mrs. Lydia Lee?
No, I'd come in here to telephone.
Was anybody in the room with you?
No. It was a private call. I was alone.
How long were you in here, Madame Lee?
What's it got to do with you?
Just answer the question.
How should I know? 15 minutes? 20? You know how long it takes to put a call through in the evening.
It was a trunk call, then?
Well, of course it was. But you don't honestly think I'd know anybody in this godforsaken dump, do you?
Well, one of them's lying. The lovely Magdalena can't have been in there alone making a phone call the same time as her husband was in there alone making a phone call.
Exactement. Perhaps we should tax them with this together, Chief Inspector.
Here's another thing I've been thinking, Poirot.
Boy, on the desk in my room you'll find my spectacles.
In your room, madam?
Not
There's
like
something not
that.
quite English about this murder.
Comment?
This throat slitting. Not quite our style. What do you have then, Poirot?
Well, that's very kind of you, Chief Inspector. A glass of dry white wine.
Wine?
Muscadet, perhaps?
Well, they might have some cider.
Hello, Hercule. How are you doing? Let me buy you a drink.
No, merci. The Chief Inspector Japp is already buying me one.
So, it was the glamorous Magdalena had the diamonds all the time, I hear.
The leather box, but not the diamonds.
Ah, Mr. Lee, I've been looking for you.
Well, you only had to look in the nearest pub. But tell me, though, what do you think of the opening times in this country?
Sit down for a minute. Good health. What made you decide to return to England after all these years?
Thought the fatted calf would make a welcome change. Now, my father wrote to me a year or so ago, suggesting that I came home, so I came.
And Monsieur Alfred, how did he feel about your return?
Alfred's always been jealous of me. You see, he was the good, stay-at-home, stick-in-the-mud son.
Tell me, Monsieur Lee, what do you think was the purpose of the confrontation that your father had with his family before dinner last evening?
He wanted to see the fur fly. He was watching us like a cat. See how we reacted.
What changes in his will was he thinking about, do you know?
I imagine, shall I say, I hoped the change would be to the benefit of your humble servant. Pilar, too, wouldn't be surprised.
You got any theories about this murder, Mr. Lee?
I don't understand it at all. I mean, that door was locked. It took some doing to break it open. I mean, there was no one in the room but Dad. Nobody could have gone out through the window.
The door was locked from the outside.
No, key was on the inside.
You noticed that, Monsieur Lee?
I do notice things. It's a habit of mine. You're right, I must get back to my friends.
I've been feeling very queer. Very queer indeed.
It is indeed a business mustard.
Oh dear, it gave me quite a turn, it did. When I went into the hall and there was this strange man standing there. And Mr. Harry's voice said, "Still here, Tressilian? Alive? the same as ever.
Must have been a feeling most strange.
It seems sometimes, sir, as if the past isn't the past at all. It seems to be the bell rings and I go to let someone in. Doesn't matter if it's Mr. Harry or Mr. George, Superintendent Sugden even. And I'm saying to myself that I've done all this before.
That is most interesting, Tressilian.
Yes, well, I'd just like to check some times with you, Mr. Tressilian. When the noise started upstairs, Mr. George Lee was telephoning. Can you confirm that?
Somebody telephoned, sir. It's the bell rings in my pantry here. If anybody lifts the receiver to dial an under, there's a faint noise on the bell here.
And about this fellow Horbury, the valet, he was definitely out of the house by 8:15?
It was a bit before that, I'd say, sir. It was just after the superintendent arrived. I remember particularly because he broke a coffee cup.
Aubrey broke a coffee cup? How was that?
He was just lifting it up, admiring it like, and I happened to mention that Superintendent Sugden had arrived, and he just dropped it.
Did he indeed? Sit down, will you?
I prefer to stand.
Very well. It's about these telephone calls on the night of the crime. You put through a call to Westringham, I think you said, Mr. Lee.
To my agent in the constituency, yes.
Your call went through at 7:56 exactly.
I couldn't say the exact time.
Ah, but we can, you see, Mr. Lee. Your call was put through at 7:56 and ended at 8:09. Your father was killed, Mr. Lee, at about 8:15, so I must ask you for an account of your movements during those 6 minutes.
But the exchange must have made a mistake. Well, I may have just finished telephoning. I think I debated making another call.
You would hardly debate whether or not to make a telephone call for 6 minutes.
Are you doubting my word?
We do like these questions answered, Mr. Lee, in a murder case.
I don't like your tone, Chief Inspector.
I'm sorry for that, Mr. Lee. Mrs. Lee, I think you said that you were telephoning when the alarm broke out, and that at that time you were alone in the study.
Telephoning? You didn't telephone from here?
Didn't I? I don't know. I was so upset.
Well, you stated that.
George, don't let them bully me. You know, if people shout at me, I can't remember anything at all. I'm so upset.
I won't have my wife treated like this. It's disgraceful. She's a very sensitive woman. I warn you, I shall have a question asked in the House about the bullying methods of the police.
She'll be back.
In about 5 minutes, I should say.
When she's worked out a story, eh, Poirot?
You know, Chief Inspector, this case, it certainly gives one to think, n'est-ce pas?
It gives one to think, all right, Poirot.
Stop it!
Look at it, poor thing. It's what I picked up in Grandfather's room. He must have had a balloon too, only his was a pink one.
You seen a ghost or something, Poirot?
Chief Inspector, I might just have done precisely that.
Bye, sir. Goodbye and Merry Christmas. Ah, Madame Lee.
Monsieur Poirot. Funnily enough, I wanted a word with you. I can trust you, I know, Mr. Poirot. You look so kind. You see, this doesn't have to go any further, does it? I mean, you don't have to tell that awful policeman. I wanted to telephone somebody. A friend of mine. A man. And I didn't want George to know about it. I know it was wrong.
I do not judge, madame.
No. Anyway, I went to telephone after dinner when I thought George would be safely in the dining room.
For 7 years. I've got these blokes chasing me for cash.
Only when I got there, I heard him telephoning, so I waited.
It's absolutely almost. And where did you wait, madame?
There's a little place for coats and hats and things just by the door. And I slipped back there where I could see George come out of the study. Only he didn't come out. And then I heard all the noise, and I heard Mr. Lee screaming. Anyway, it would be very, very awkward for me to talk about this in front of George. You do see that, don't you?
Here, Poirot.
Listen to this.
Good afternoon, Sergeant.
Sir?
Tell Mr. Poirot what you just told me.
Well, sir, the superintendent asked me to make a few inquiries, like about any reason that Horbury might have for being a bit careful about the place.
Did you find any reason, Sergeant?
That he did. Extorting money under threat in Bedfordshire. Modified blackmail. The case couldn't be proved, so he got off.
Yeah, but he could not have possibly have committed a murder. His lady friend said he was at the cinema, and everyone agrees that he left the house before 8 o'clock.
Yes, I know. Blessed infuriating. Tell him the other thing, Coombs.
Well, sir, we also made an inquiry or two about Mrs. George Lee. Magdalena Jones, as she was when she was living with a Commander Jones down in Hambledon. Passed her off as his daughter, only she wasn't.
And before that, she was Madeline Potts of Willesden. She left with most of the commander's savings and debts all over Hampshire.
Thank you very much, Sergeant. I do not think that one is as simple as she seems, Chief Inspector. On the night of the murder, she said that she went to telephone a man. But she overheard her husband on the telephone and concealed herself until he finished.
Well, it sounds like about her dap.
What are these blooming things, Poirot?
Now, these are the miniature gardens of Madame Alfred Lee.
Well, what's the point of having a miniature garden? I mean, you can't do anything with it, can you? You can't take a deck chair out and sit in it.
They are art, Chief Inspector. See here. This one is the Vineyard Italien, and this one is the Garden Japanese.
Well, it's just stones, isn't it? I mean, I know the Japanese are peculiar, but... What are you looking at? What is it? It's a stone. Very nice.
Nicer than you think, Chief Inspector.
Frog's been doing his Christmas shopping.
I want to see what he has brought for me.
Steady on.
No, it's not for me, I think.
What the devil is it?
It is an imitation moustache.
I knew that thing of his couldn't be real.
What is it?
We'd like a word, Mrs. Lee, if that's convenient.
Yes. All right, I'll come out. I'm sorry, Alfred's resting. He had very little sleep last night. Would you come through here? This is his mother's old room. It hasn't been touched since she died.
Tell me, madame, your husband, he was very attached to his mother.
He adored her.
We were wondering if you could explain these.
What are they?
Uncut diamonds, Mrs. Lee. We found them in your Japanese garden.
My dear Chief Inspector, if I'd stolen the diamonds, I would have just dug a hole in a flower bed somewhere and buried them there. Oh, have you still really no idea who can have done this awful murder?
I got more idea who didn't do it.
Oh, please, God, let it be a stranger, not a member of the family.
It might be both.
What do you mean?
It might be a member of the family and at the same time a stranger. It is merely a little idea that has occurred to the mind of Hercule Poirot.
The official reading of the will generally takes place after the funeral of the deceased. However, as that will not now be until after the inquest, I have been asked to give you the bare bones of Mr. Simeon Lee's testament now.
Asked by whom?
Interested parties, Mr. Lee. The main provisions of the will, which was made 10 years ago, are quite simple. Half Mr. Simeon Lee's property goes to his son, Mr. Alfred Lee. The remainder is divided equally between his other children.
Alfred struck lucky again, as per usual. Half the old man's fortune.
You ought to think yourself lucky my father left you anything at all.
Well, I don't think I need to go any further with that.
What about Pilar?
Miss Estramados is not mentioned in the will.
Doesn't she get her mother's share?
Jennifer Estramados, if she had lived, would of course have received her equal share with the rest of you. As she is dead, the portion that would have been hers goes back into the estate to be shared out between you.
Then I have nothing.
Oh, my dear, the family will see to that, of course.
I think she ought to get Jennifer's whack.
Well, I really must be going. Goodbye, Mrs. Lee. Anything I can do, please consult me at any time.
I agree with Harry. I think Pilar is entitled to a definite share. I mean, this will was made years before Jennifer's death.
The law is the law, I'm afraid. We must abide by it.
Yes, we're all very sorry for Pilar. But as George says, the law is the law.
My dear, this must be very unpleasant for you. Would you please leave us while we discuss the question?
Yes. Yes, very well.
Well, gentlemen, you've heard what you came for. This is family business now. You really are a skinflint, George, aren't you, huh?
At least I'm not a sponger.
You have battened on Dad these last 30 years.
As an elected member of His Majesty's Parliament...
Can we please discuss this sanely and quietly?
Yes. Jennifer only died last year. I am sure that when Simeon sent for Mr. Charlton, he intended to make provision for Pilar in a new will. I think we should carry out what we can assume were his wishes.
I agree.
Certainly not. The whole thing's preposterous.
Considering George is the only person in this family who has done anything in the world, I think it's shameful his father left him so little.
Well, that's clear enough. Of the family, Alfred and I are in favour of the motion. George is against. The ayes have it.
There isn't any question of ayes or noes. My share of my father's estate is mine, absolutely. I shall not part with one penny of it.
So who profits by the fact that Simeon Lee didn't have time to alter his will?
All of them except the Spanish girl.
So we can cross her off the list then?
Yes. Well, maybe.
No, I will not.
It's all right, Pilar. Your blood right.
You speak like that. That is why I cannot do it.
But it's not a matter of charity. It's justice.
You have all spoiled everything. I am going away. Now, at once. You will not be troubled by me no more.
Now, the matter of your passport, Miss...
Go to hell!
What's going on?
It's a family matter. I'm sorry. Alfred and I had agreed to settle a third of our share of the estate on her. She refused to take it.
alive.
Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning, sir.
Merry Christmas.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Hercule, have you heard how the girl is this morning?
Merry Christmas to you, Monsieur Harry. Yes, Mademoiselle Estrovados, she sleeps peacefully. She has, I think, the clavicle that is broken.
Yes, I heard all that from the doc last night, but, I mean, who would want to do such a thing?
Excuse me.
What have you got to tell me then, Poaro?
I opened the drawer and I took out the Roman passport. And she's been done.
What's the meaning of all this?
Merry Christmas, Maggie.
Good morning. Please to come in now. Please to make yourselves as comfortable as possible. Mademoiselle Estrovados has something that she wishes to say to you.
You think I am your niece, Pilar Estrovados? That is not so.
I don't understand, Pilar.
I would not have told you. Not ever, but for the money. To come here and pretend and cheat and act, that was fun. But when Lydia said that the money was mine and that it was only justice, it was no fun any longer. I am sorry. Pilar was killed when I was traveling with her in her car in Spain. And I had not much money and nowhere to go. And I thought, why should I not go to England and become rich? And when it began, it was fun wondering if I could...
This is preposterous. This is criminal. Getting money by false pretenses.
Well, she didn't get much from you, old boy, did she? So, I'm not your uncle anymore, eh?
I'm afraid it's rather more serious than that. If she could lie about that, she could lie about anything. I'll tell you what I think, Miss... What's your name?
Lopez. Conchita Lopez.
Very well, Miss Lopez. I'll tell you what I think happened. When Mr. Lee found that the diamonds were missing, he sent word for you to come and see him immediately after dinner. You did so, and he accused you of the theft. You denied it.
No, this is not true. I left the drawing room after dinner. I came up here to my room. I wanted a clean handkerchief, but then I thought I would go and see the old man. I thought he would be pleased. But when I turned out onto the stairs, I saw that someone else was there at his door. I slipped back into the corridor in case the person turned around. I did not want them to think that I was... Oh, I don't know the word.
Ingratiating yourself.
Yes?
No. Go on, Pilar. Conchita.
I heard those horrible noises, crashes, screams, and when the people came running, I came out at the end and joined them.
Wait a minute. This is all very airy-fairy. You say you saw someone standing outside Simeon Lee's door. Who did you see?
I do not know who it was. It was too dimly lit to see, but it was a woman.
Rubbish. She's just saying anything to get off the hook. I always said an outsider killed my father.
In my opinion, Simeon Lee, your father, he was killed by his own flesh and blood.
One of us? I deny that.
Oh, yes. There is a case against every person in this room.
Nonsense. Balderdash!
Eh bien, I will begin with the case against you, Monsieur Georges Lee.
Now, wait a minute.
You had no love for your father. You kept on good terms with him for the sake of money. On the day that he died, he threatened to cut down your allowance, but you knew that when he died, you would probably inherit a sum more substantial, and there is your motive.
I never heard...
After dinner, you went to telephone. This telephone call lasted 13 minutes. You could then have easily visited the room of your father and killed him. Afterwards, you left the room, turned the key from the outside in the hope that the whole affair would look like that of a burglar. But you omitted in your panic to make sure that the window it was left open to support this burglar theory. And that was stupid. But you will pardon me for saying so, rather a stupid man. But you know, many of the stupid men have become criminals.
How dare you speak to my husband like that?
Ah, yes. Then there is, of course, Madame Lee. She also had a motive. She is, I think, in debt. And the tone of the remarks made by Simeon Lee would have caused us some uneasiness.
Roger, you know this, sir.
She also has no alibi. She said she went to the telephone. But did she, in fact, make a call? And in any case, we only have her word for what she did.
I suppose it's our turn now.
Now, how do you suggest that dear Alfred killed his beloved father when we were both together in the dining room at the time?
Eh bien, that is very simple, monsieur. You and your brother are on the terms very bad, n'est-ce pas? No, that is well known. But let us suppose that these bad terms are all part of a clever plot. Let us suppose that you and he have got together some time before. And then comes the night of the murder, which together you had planned so cleverly. One of you remains in the dining room, talking out loud and quarreling to make it appear as though there were two people in the room. While the other brother, he goes upstairs and commits the crime.
I mean, I don't think you understand.
Devil!
But what if it was not a woman that Mademoiselle Lopez saw outside the room of Simeon Lee? What if Mademoiselle Lopez is again lying, but this time to support a man of whom she has grown rather fond?
Now look! No, you're wrong. It was me that Pilar saw.
You, Lydia?
Can't believe I've been such a coward. To keep silent just because I was afraid.
I think you'd better tell us now, Mrs. Lee.
I'd been thinking all evening about the unpleasant scene we'd had with Simeon before dinner. When Conchita left the drawing room, I decided to go up and see him. I was going to be firm with him. I was going to tell him that Alfred and I were leaving.
Lydia?
Yes, I was. I'd had enough humiliation, Alfred. I knocked on Simeon's door. There was no answer. I knocked again. Still no answer. I tried the door handle, and the door was locked. And those terrible noises started inside the room. I stood there, paralyzed. And then Alfred and the others came running and battered down the door, and we saw inside the room. And there was no one there. Just Simeon lying dead. There was no one else there. Do you understand me? And no one had come out.
And all this time you've said nothing?
No, because if I had, there is only one thing that you could have thought. That I had killed my father-in-law.
No, madame. When you heard those screams, most awful, when you heard the sounds of the struggle, Simeon Lee was already dead.
Already dead? What do you mean, already dead?
Did I not tell to you, Chief Inspector, that I thought I had seen a ghost? The first intimation I had of this was when I visited a shop in the village. And the owner of this shop, he is a fellow most jovial, n'est-ce pas? He delights in the childish pranks and, how do you say, les blagues? The practical tricks.
You're not trying to tell us that this was all a practical joke?
No, madame, not a joke. But a trick most deadly. The killing itself was simple. Our murderer sets the scene. The diamonds are taken from the safe, which had already been opened by Simeon Lee. As much furniture as possible is piled in the center of the room like a tower. Then, a strong, thin length of cord is tied around this tower. The two ends of the cord are then passed through the narrow gap in the window and allowed to drop to the ground below. The door, it is locked from the outside. The stage, it is set. Our murderer walks casually away, waits a little while, then returns to the wall below the window and takes up the slack on both ends of the cord. And now at last the perpetrator has prepared the final element in his ruthless plot.
But the scream! The terrible scream!
Ah, yes, of course. The dying screams of Simeon Lee. The cry of a man in mortal agony, a soul in hell. Monsieur Harry Lee came closest to it when he described that sound as that of a killing of a pig. And it was here that my friend in the village shop unwittingly played his part.
Morning.
In that establishment most eccentric, the owner sells long pink bladders which have painted on them faces. These are called dying pigs. They are blown up like a balloon, and the little wooden peg is placed in one end to prevent the escape of air. Our murderer had placed in the room one of these balloons and had attached the cord to the little wooden peg. Plan accomplished. Our murderer then pulls the remains of the dying pig out through the window, leaving behind only the little wooden peg and the telltale fragment of the balloon. But you know, the most valuable clue in this case was uttered quite unknowingly by the butler Tressilian. He said that he felt strange. He said that he felt that things were happening that had happened before. And it was one very simple occurrence that gave to him this feeling most strange. It was when he met Monsieur Harry Lee, when Monsieur Harry Lee first entered the house.
Bless my soul if it ain't Tressilian.
Mr. Harry.
And when you look at the face of Monsieur Harry Lee, you can see why.
What the devil do you mean?
In the face, Monsieur Harry Lee closely resembled his father. But the similarity is quite striking when one observes the portrait of Monsieur Simeon Lee in the sitting room. En effet, all of the men in the Lee family have a likeness that is most strong.
All right, Poirot. All very clever, no doubt. But who is this murderer we keep hearing about?
Ah, the good Chief Inspector Japp. Always the one to make Poirot stick to his task. Eh bien, Chief Inspector, in order to answer your question, it is necessary that we make a short journey. Suivez-moi.
I hope you know what you're up to, Poirot.
Bonjour, Madame de Zactre. We would like to see your son, if you please.
Oh, God.
This was indeed the death of an evil man. Remember the reputation of Simeon Lee? How he broke the heart of his wife because of his numerous affairs with other women? Remember also his boasts of the illegitimate sons that he had sired. A man born, you will pardon me, madame, on the wrong side of the blanket can nonetheless inherit the features of his father. His pride, his patience, and his vengeful spirit.
It was my revenge, my pride, my vengeful spirit, and I did not inherit it from Simeon Lee. I got nothing from Simeon Lee, nothing.
And you waited. You and your son followed Simeon Lee, and you waited.
40 years.
You instilled into your son your own rage.
I saved Simeon Lee's life, and he used me, and he stole from me, and he deserted me and my child.
Your son changed his name, settled down to a career, and he also waited. Nothing in this life was so important to either of you but the total destruction of Simeon Lee.
Simeon Lee earned his death as he earned nothing else in his whole life. He was a...
Come in, Superintendent.
What's going on?
And now you can see it, can you not, Chief Inspector? You can see why Tressilian felt so disoriented.
What's all this about?
The extent of his disorientation did not fully dawn upon me until I purchased from the village shop the false moustache and attached it to the portrait of Simeon Lee in the sitting room. The likeness, it was extraordinary.
You're saying I look like Simeon Lee?
You are like Simeon Lee in almost every respect.
None of that!
You resemble very closely your father. And also like your father, you are prepared to wait years if necessary for your revenge. And your revenge is indeed terrible. And so you embark on your ingenious subterfuge. Weaving the intricate web of deception that will make the murder which you have committed appear to have been perpetrated by an innocent member of the household, while you yourself were absent. You make sure that Tresillian notes well your exit from the house.
We'll be having more snow tonight, I shouldn't wonder.
Good night. Good night, sir.
You stop halfway down the drive. Wait long enough to distance yourself from the crime in the minds of the family. And then return to the house. Once beneath the window, you activate the mechanism most crude that creates the hideous sound of a murder that you had already committed. And then, to further your alibi, you find an excuse to actually come back into the house.
I'd forgotten my book. I want this room clear.
In this way, you are fortuitously present to investigate your own crime.
These are mere ravings. Unsubstantiated ravings.
No, Superintendent. Also, like your father, you are prepared to stop at nothing to achieve your aim. As the investigating officer, you're perfectly placed to put the diamonds where you know they will be found. And to do the same with a black leather case. In this way, you sought to incriminate the innocent. And worse, Mademoiselle Lopez had given to you already one very nasty moment.
I think that when he was a young man, he must have been very handsome. Like you.
You knew, which we did not know, that she meant that literally.
I think I'd better go and find Sergeant Coombs.
She saw the likeness, and then she made the discovery of the balloon.
It is what I picked up in Grandfather's room. He must have had a balloon too.
Suddenly you were afraid. You thought that she might put the two and two together. And from that moment, the fate of Mademoiselle Lopez, it was sealed. It was indeed fortunate for her that at your first clumsy blows, she screamed, and you were forced to leave the task unfinished.
Madre de Dios.
Harold Sugden, I am arresting you on a charge of the willful murder of your father, Simeon Lee.
May his soul rot in hell. I'm sorry, Mother.
We did well, Harold.
Come on, let's get it over with.
Angels from the realms of glory, wing your flights o'er all the earth. Ye who excelsis Deo.
How were you going to telephone then?
My dressmaker.
At 8 o'clock on the night before Christmas Eve?
Why did old Simeon ask you down here in the first place?
Because Superintendent Sugden wanted an expert witness to the proceedings to prove that he could not have been involved. So he asked Simeon Lee to invite me.
But Sugden said he didn't.
That is because he did not want us to know that he'd been in contact with Simeon Lee before.
Mr. Poirot, Chief Inspector Japp, must you go so soon?
It is with regret, madame, but we have to catch the train. Monsieur Lee.
Mr. Poirot, I wanted to thank you so very much.
No, pas du tout, madame. It is a sad thing, though, to meet like this and at Christmas. Au revoir, madame.
Monsieur Poirot, I wanted to say goodbye and to thank you.
Mademoiselle Lopez. And might I suggest that in the future you maintain your own identity? It will cause, I am sure, much less of the complications.
Harry and I are going to Paris.
Yeah, she knows she'll be safe with an old man like me.
I'm sure she will, Monsieur Harry.
Goodbye.
Oh, yes.
Merry Christmas, Chief Inspector.
Oh, Poirot, you shouldn't have.
I have not yet thanked you for my present.
Well, I hope you like them.
Oh, I do very, very much indeed. Such wonderful colors and such workmanship.
Emily's been knitting away at those blessed gloves for months.
Ah, well, you must tell her how much I thank her and how much her skill it is appreciated.
I will. I will. You're not going to wear them now, then?
No, mon ami. This must be kept for best, huh? I shall wear them only when I go to church.